This episode is brought to you by our sponsor, the American Academy of Orthokeratology and Myopia Control, which is currently introducing its new base membership. What is base membership? Well, it's the AAOMC's new free introductory membership type, designed to help educate doctors on myopia control and orthokeratology. Whether you are brand new, an experienced fitter searching for pearls, or someone who's dabbled in the past and ready to step up their game, AAOMC base membership can help, and it's free. So what do you have to lose? Go to ORTHO-KAcademy.com, click on the practitioner button, and join us. Join the war against the myopia epidemic.
All right, welcome to The Corrected View. This is a podcast about orthokeratology. It's a podcast about myopia control, and it's a podcast about the men and women who are devoted to its role in specialty care. And with me today, I have none other than Dr. Brianna Rhue from Florida. She's one of the members of the American Academy of Orthokeratology and Myopia Control. Brianna, welcome to the program.
I'm excited to be here.
And my name is Matthew Herzberg. I always forget to introduce myself, but I am the executive director of the AAOMC. And the reason why I have Brianna on is because we are launching a virtual boot camp. Every year for Vision by Design, we have an extensive soup to nuts ORTHO-K program where we teach doctors how to do ORTHO-K. It's the very beginning of our Vision by Design program. It's amazing. It's an incredible experience. And unfortunately, we can't do it because of COVID. So we're doing an online virtual version of it that's going to be launching in May. And Brianna is the perfect person to bring on because she's somebody who, became interested in myopia control, came to Vision by Design and went through the boot camp program and is kicking ass with it right now. So Brianna, why don't we start out by saying, how did you get interested in myopia control? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got interested in doing ORTHO-K.
Perfect. So I graduated from Nova Southeastern in 2009, did a residency at Bascom Palmer. Then I went into private practice where it was very heavy contact lens based practice. So I bought into that practice in 2015. And then I was part of the Broward County Optometric Association. And then it just kind of introduced me to people. I'm now the most recent past president of that association. But I think associations, which I felt that instantly through the AAOMC, is this passionate group of people that is really, really hard to come by in the industry, where we're all just rowing in the same boat. And I think that's what the AAOMC really is and what it does. And the energy there is just unbelievable. So I can't wait until we can get back to in-person meetings. But one of the doctors during that meeting, Scott Pearl, who I became my mentor, who introduced me to the AAOMC and myopia management. And I thank him from the bottom of my heart. I still talk to him. He did become my mentor, but he said, Brianna, you've got to get to Vision by Design. And when we're looking at conferences as ODs, you're kind of always looking at, the AAOMC conference was not an inexpensive conference to go to by any means, right? So I'm going to invest 5 days away from my practice, paid to get there. And so it really was an investment. And I saw it as an investment. I was sick of the burn and turn. I went to Vision by Design. I sat there and I fell instantly in love with the people in the AAOMC. So you had, Paul Levine and Carrie Herzberg and all of these people that you could just feel their passion. And that's how I got there. I went to the Orlando meeting when it was in Orlando. So that helped me out 2016.
Yeah, 2016.
And then I was actually pregnant. So I had my son. I am a myope. I'm a -5.5. My husband's a -6.5. And it was just kind of, I had just started going down this rabbit hole after Scott got me engaged with what is myopia management. At that point, it was still kind of snake oil. I mean, really, we didn't learn it in school. None of us were really doing it. There were very few people, which were all the speakers, right, at Vision by Design, who were trying to uplift other colleagues, which was so cool in our industry. So I went to boot camp, stayed for the rest of the meeting, and never practiced another way when I came back. So that was kind of how I got interested in boot camp, how I even found out about boot camp, and just really ran with it.
So what was the boot camp experience like? Like what did you learn in boot camp? Because the reason why I'm asking is there's so many myopia programs out right now. There's so many different, and I'm not trying to throw shade on any of them. Like we're primarily focused on the research and education here at the AAOMC. So we just want to get the word out. We want to get people in the know. We want everyone to know about the myopia epidemic and why they should be, doing ORTHO-K and myopia management. So, but what is it about the boot camp program that really separates itself, from what else is out there for you?
So at the time being, there was maybe 300 of us in that boot camp. So it was Wednesday, Thursday, and then it kind of goes into the rest of the meeting. And having done my residency where I did it, I was so against ORTHO-K, to be quite honest. I didn't learn it. I didn't know how to do it. I got the 20-minute course in school, like on a Friday afternoon, and they were like, okay, go fit this on your patient who was one of us, right? One of our colleagues at the time. And they're like, okay, but now we got to get to the bar. So like that was literally how we learned ORTHO-K, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think to this day that's getting better, but we really, at the heart of it, didn't learn it. So then when I went to do my residency, when you're dealing with kids, there's this comfort that you need when you're dealing with kids, right? Not all of us are going to want to become myopia management experts or even manage this, and that's okay. We just want you to learn it, know that you have to understand it, and possibly maybe even bring in an associate that likes to do this or whatever you want to. Take this for what it's worth. But obviously when dealing with kids, there's another level of care that you have to provide because it is a kid. It is a child. It is their vision, right? So when ORTHO-K, I was like, I had it on my head that, okay, we're putting a lens on the eye. It's rubbing all over the place when they're sleeping at night. We're warping this cornea. We're doing no good for this kid when that couldn't be further from the truth, right? So I remember, and I cannot still to this day remember who told me it, but there was one of those speakers and they said, look, a human hair is 70 microns thick. What we're doing with ORTHO-K is we're compressing, not touching, compressing the central tissue by 10 to 12 microns to mold a -5, right? And I think what's so cool about that, I was able to wrap my head that I wasn't doing damage. And yes, we have to be good at what we're doing with topography and all these things, and we can get into that later, what it takes. But that little flip in my head at the very beginning of that lecture opened my eyes to a whole different viewpoint where you've got people from Asia there, you've got people from all over the world that come to the AAOMC meeting, and you see how the ophthalmologists are working together, how optometrists are working together. And again, that energy was just incredible and has been unmatched since I found the AAOMC. So wrapping your head around the ORTHO-K part was really a hard point for me, but once I got there, I just never looked back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the way that you put that. It reminds me of, once people get into that boot camp and see the energy and the devotion of the people who are involved, like one of the things every year when I exhibit at other meetings or have a table at other meetings, there's always these couple of people that you see at other meetings who you had a conversation with and they went to boot camp. And there's so many of those people that come up to me and say, thank you so much for convincing me to do this. And one of those people comes to mind who, like, we had to have a long conversation with him because he originally was like, you shouldn't do ORTHO-K on kids. He's like, it's okay to do it on adults, but you shouldn't do it on kids. And I was like, well, I know like thousands of people all over the world who are doing this on kids. So to hear you say that, like how like it almost has this nefarious origin, that you were talking about where it was snake oil. That's what that reminds me of. And it's like, that's kind of goes along with my next question is like, that's how it was. The way it is now is that this is unavoidable. Like the myopia epidemic is only getting worse. It's not getting better. So, what is it really going to take for people to, really just take this seriously now? It's like, it's not snake oil. It's not, it's not nefarious. It's an actual thing. And people, and, docs need to be doing it. as somebody who went into that program, like after that program, like you had to come back to your practice, you've learned how to do it, you've learned why it's important, you devoted 5 days out of your practice, and you're not wrong, it's not a cheap meeting. There's a reason for it. Like, we're trying to deliver a premium education experience because there's a lot that goes into it. We are a nonprofit organization, but we want to put forth the best education and product that we can. So tell me about how you got home from from the meeting to your practice, and what kind of plan did you put into effect? Like, what happened from that point forward?
Yeah, I absolutely ran with it. I remember coming home that Sunday, so like driving home that 3 hours, and like I wanted to just kind of be writing as I was driving because my head was just spinning full of what I wanted to do. And my staff knew where I was. And whenever I always go to any meeting, regardless of the AAOMC, I always come back with more ideas. So when I get back to the office every Monday from a conference, I literally block off 2 hours of the beginning of that day to really tell my staff what I learned, what I'm going to be working on. We're always changing and are practicing and honing in on our skills. And so, you know, I have a staff surrounded by me that loves change. They've had to learn to change, which a lot of staff members will not do. And so that's kind of where I've always started. Like, my staff is me, right? And so this having to involve them was more important. So what I did is I got home Sunday and I literally wrote a lecture of all of the questions that I had. And I'm not saying that you have to come and write a lecture, but I feel like it was where I was going to take my career. And I hadn't really felt anything like that before. And so I did that step approach, and then I went in to a whiteboard. I have a whiteboard in my office. If you don't have a whiteboard at your office, get a whiteboard at your office. Because it's just a way for you to kind of keep your ideas going and thriving. And I gave myself a week to put together my program. So at boot camp, they give you all these things, you know, what contracts you should put in, what informed consent is what we would call them now, right? Informed consent is not necessarily a contract. Getting in place who your ORTHO-K people are going to be. What equipment are you going to need? So I bought an axial length measurement there because I knew that that's where I wanted to take it. I put that whole platform in place, figured out what I was going to charge. And again, these are at your disposal. So it's not something where you have to reinvent this wheel. This is not what that is. And that's what I loved about the education piece to this, is you can learn all of this. It's very easy. Yes, there's no cookie cutter approach to each case, but you're learning how the genetics at play, the near work, and all these things, ORTHO-K, atropine, soft multifocal, dual focus, all the lens options that we have, not here in the US, but obviously that are coming. And so I literally just came back, scoped it out. And so yes, you have to take maybe another day after boot camp, or maybe that Friday after boot camp, to kind of get all this out on paper on where you're going to want to take it. So that's how I went from like a boot camper to having, I think, our first ORTHO-K fit within 2 weeks of boot camp, which was actually my staff member. So she's like a -2. I was like, in here right now, I need your eyeballs. We're fitting with ORTHO-K. So that's how I got my first fit, and then you just kind of snowball from there.
Yeah, and that's one common thing that I've heard from a lot of docs doing ORTHO-K is like, do it on your staff, do it on your family, you know what I mean? Like, get those easier cases, or those cases that you can get your feet wet, figure out what's going on and whatnot. And then, I love the dynamic you have with your staff, because it's something we've talked about in this podcast again and again, is like having a great staff to support you and be in line with what ORTHO-K is and the myopia management program in your office, like, is so key. Like, that's one of the reasons why we have started as staff boot camp module for our boot camp. And it's going to be in our virtual program. So, for docs who want to learn how to do it and then want to get their staff involved as well, then we have that ready to go. And it's while I have you on, because you've gone from somebody who was like interested in this, went out, made the investment, came home, started it out, and now you're kicking ass with it. So I was wondering what's like one or two things that like you think are like maybe not common mistakes, but that were like road bumps, things that like now that you've had some time doing it and you've gotten great at it, like what are some like pearls of wisdom you could pass on to somebody who is like now they're like the early version of you now. They're watching this. They're like, maybe I should do boot camp. Like, what kind of advice could you pass on to them? Like some things that, you came across and now this is what you would have to say about it.
Yeah, some true like things that I did was I jumped the gun a little bit too early with some of my patients. I came back super, super excited. And I was like, this is what we're going to do. I've got that -2 7-year-old in my chair. Like I can do something, right? I was like, and I did, but I did not have my fee structure in place. So as you come back from boot camp, you have got to get your fee structure in place before you even fit your first myope. That was a downfall I did, because whatever you do day one, you're going to have to undo in a year or two when you actually understand what your pricing structure should be. So what a lot of us have done is you figure out what if you're going to charge a global fee, if you're going to charge all of that up front, if you're going to charge the same for ORTHO-K, dual focus, soft multifocal, and atropine. That was really the road bump, was not understanding the chair time. And there's a chair time calculator on Paragon's website to understand what you should be charging. So yes, you can call your colleagues and figure out what they're charging, but you ultimately have to make that decision for yourself. Are you going to do a 1-year program? Are you going to do a 2-year program? Are you going to charge visit by visit? And figure out your cost of goods associated with that, because all of us are a little bit different. So fees is number one, what you have to do before you even fit your first myope. And again, there's all of these resources out there for you to understand that. And then you have to build your program. So getting your informed consents, and that is all again available through boot camp, which is great. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel here. And I think a lot of people say that this won't work for my practice. It does. It's just different numbers in front of it. So that is my one pearl of wisdom. And then getting your staff, because getting confident with telling a patient that you're going to charge them $2,000 for ORTHO-K or $2,500 for ORTHO-K, whatever your fee is going to be. Do not undercut yourself. You are very valuable. It doesn't matter if you practice under a bridge or if you practice in a private setting. Patients, you can't be everything to everybody. And so there's a lot of education. You are going to get hit by no's all the time, because you're going to come across with this passion. And I was just like verbally like throwing up on all my patients. Like I was so excited, right? So you've got to get your elevator pitch down to 1 or 2 things. Paragon's got a great flip book. My site's got a great flip book. Like these have already been that talking track that you have to get a patient and a parent interested in, has already been developed for you. So it's understanding that a 15-minute to a 20-minute visit is not going to cut it. It's going to get you really far behind. I had many days where my staff had to work through lunch because they would laugh. Like, here's a myope that comes in like a -3, and they're like, oh no, we're going to miss lunch again. Like, so figuring out your consulting fees, right? So this is a consultation. This is something that vision plans do not cover. This is something that medical plans do not cover, and getting comfortable with asking for that sale. So there were some of my pitfalls.
I love it. I love it. And you know, that reminds me, you know, Nick Despeditas says, you know, all the time that like when he started out, he heard a lot of no's, and he's like, you have to learn how to grow thicker skin. He's like, you're going to have those time periods where things didn't work out and you're sitting in your office, just sitting there going like, great, now what do I do? Like, I've got this open block of time and it's not being filled. And he said he used that time to think about what he needed to do, what he needed to change, how he needed to fine tune everything. And it's like, that's, I think, a thing that people need to understand is like, this isn't like an overnight success kind of situation. I'm not saying that you can't go back to your practice and start implementing it and see results. You certainly can. But you got to learn that like, this is something that people are going to be resistant to, or they're not going to be into it that first time. Or maybe when you see them that follow-up year, you're like, hey, remember when we talked about this? Like, your child's eyes are getting worse. Like, remember when we talked about, the options that we have available? So that's the first thing that popped into my head. And Dr. D does, he's an important part of that boot camp program. And that's more of that is in his lecture. So, Brianna, like, what is it going to take? Because I feel like we're at this point now where it's like, you can't have your head in the sand anymore about the myopia epidemic. Like, everybody's talking about it. It's a huge part of this industry now. There's all sorts of talks and opinions about it. There's like, everybody's talking about it. And it's like, I remember the early days when I first started working for the AAOMC, when I was just a snot-nosed kid. And like, these doctors would walk past we would do, conferences. I'd be at a booth and I'd have my brochures and my talking points, and these doctors would be like,
literally selling snake oil.
Right, sure. Yeah. So that's the way I was treated, right? Like, these doctors would be like, why would I do this? And I'd be like, it's like, I'd have that moment where I was like, I'd have to start thinking creatively. I'd have to remember what I was taught. And like, I said a lot of dumb, well, I'm gonna have to edit that part out. We'll bleep that out. So I said a lot of dumb stuff initially, but I learned, like, I had to learn more about it. I had to learn why it's important. And it's like, there's so many people who are resistant to this. And I figure now you can't hide from it any longer. So what is it going to take to get myopia to go mainstream? Like, what is it going to take for doctors to get off the sidelines and start bringing, myopia management into their practice?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that you hit on there, Matt. I think obviously this is not something we can ignore anymore, right? The ship has sailed, and you're either going to get on it and enjoy this ride, or you're going to be paddling behind as fast as you can to catch up. And so I will tell you, this is a very, very fun boat to be on. The data is constantly changing. And so yes, one day we can be saying one thing, and then we have to switch the concentration of atropine again. It's just a science, right? So we're all learning this science together. So it's a very, very fun conversation to be a part of. I think one thing that's really fun at AAOMC is you're literally dealing with some of the greatest minds, and they're up on stage, and it was 2 years ago, like, they were battling against each other, like, so mad at one another. And it was so cool to see this passionate group of people with all this research behind it. But yeah, you can't ignore it anymore. It's on every single journal. It's on every single Facebook thread. It's on everything that you can do. So doctors, this education piece, just like we learned glaucoma in school, and we learned about cataracts, and we learned what to do when a patient has a retinal detachment, it's just something that we have to learn, right? So that's where the AAOMC's job is, to come in and help us with this education piece on being able to look at the genetic factors at play, being able to look at that kid on, this year they're 6 and they're supposed to be scoping a plus 175. So that kid's already nearsighted. So doing little things, we're saying, instead of saying, I'll see you in a year, saying, I'll see you in 6 months. So the education piece, but what it's going to take is us learning that piece to it, and then strategizing to implement things, which I think is where that disconnect is, right? Mm-hmm. You get excited at boot camp, you've got all this research, and then you go back into your practice and you get bombarded by your staff. You haven't been in practice for a week, so all of that just kind of goes on your shelf and your to-do list. So what I've chronically done in our practice is focus 90-day stints on something. So like, our next 90 days is actually focused on myopia management, making sure all of our contracts and our informed consents are updated and legit, and everything is in the computer. Our website is up to date. Like, just getting all of those little ducks in a row versus this huge mountain of to-dos. So I think that's what we all get derailed with when we get into a busy practice and get back to being a boss to all these people, right? So that's where you have to implement with your staff. So remember that circle of life. You as the doctor take care of your staff, who take care of your patients, who take care of you. We're so worried about taking care of our patients, we lose all of those, and all the wheels fall off. Mm-hmm. So you've got to get your staff involved with this. But that's where right now it's fun, right? The education piece, as we're saying, even from 5 years ago, has just growing and growing and growing. And I see us in the future that this is something that will become standard of care. I don't know if that's 10 years from now. I don't know if this is 20 years from now, but just play this out a little bit. If you've got, and put it in your own kid, right? If you have kids. Okay, so my kid's a -3 when he's 7. He'll end up somewhere between a -8 to a -9. So he's got a crazy risk potential for retinal detachments and glaucoma. Okay, so let's fast forward when he's 35, he comes in with myopic maculopathy. Had I been able to keep that kid at a -4 or -5, right? That parent, why couldn't they come back in a few years and say, hey, you knew about this. Why didn't you offer this or refer this to somebody that could have done something? This gets really scary.
Mm-hmm.
So now is the point to take this and know that we can really do something and help change that trajectory. So first off, education, and then it's got to be this little checklist, which I think you guys have, Matt,
Mm-hmm.
of a checklist in place when you get back of what to do, where to start. So you don't
Right.
have to reinvent the wheel. That's what
Right.
AOMC is there for.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And, I think about, how much things have changed to go to what you're saying. Like, I think of how much things have changed since I was that snot-nosed kid, like hiding behind that booth with his brochures in his face, hoping nobody would notice him. But like, it's gotten to a point now where, like, the pandemic especially, it's like parents know that their kids being in front of computer screens or their phone or whatever all day can't be good. Like, they're getting on board with this. This is going to become a part of what you're going to hear from patients in the future. And it's like, do you want to be that doc who's like, I don't know how to deal with this? Or do you want to be that doc who's like, yeah, I know this is a problem and I support this organization and I've gotten the education to do it and it's a component of my practice. And it's like, that's the part where I'm like, because personally speaking, I don't think every OD should do myopia management. Like, if your heart's not in it, don't do it. If you're not good with kids, don't do it. You know what I mean? But if you are devoted to that particular aspect, if you are interested in it, if you can at least learn how to be good with kids, because I know docs who are like, they regret not opening up that pediatric side of their practice in their earlier days. And it wasn't impossible for them to learn how to, specialize and work with kids. It's not impossible. But it's like, I personally think not every OD should do it. If your heart's not in it, don't do it, But if this is a concern of yours, if this is something you're interested in, if you do care about this, to an extent where you want to do something about it in your practice, then by all means. And that's why I'm having you on right now, because I'm like, because like, I think it was like before we started recording or when we were on with our episode with Linda, where it's like, I love the way you described this. You're like, I went to VBD, I went to boot camp, and I was drinking the Kool-Aid with a fire hose. And I love the way that you put that, because it's like, Brianna is like the perfect example of a doc who's like, I know something needs to change and I'm going to go make that change happen. And one thing I want to ask you about too is, because another common theme is that a lot of the members of the AAOMC describe like losing passion in their practice before they started doing myopia management. I was wondering if you could speak to that even. Like, was that your experience? Did this like reinvigorate and give you back a passion in optometry? Like, what was your experience like?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we are all being crushed by vision plans, by online vendors. There's so much coming at us always in optometry. And I want to, shout from the rooftops as being a past president. There's all this doom and gloom as an optometrist, it does not have to be there, right? But when you go into a dark room all day and say 1 or 2 I was, 6 years in and I was like, oh my God, there's got to be something better. I was literally feeling that burnout, Matt, and myopia like opened up this whole new area and perspective and view. And again, when you're coming back to, yes, I don't think every OD is going to want to do this or even should do this. And that's okay. You can still hire an associate. You can refer up the street and kind of trade back and forth. Like, dry eye, do I love to do it? No, but I've got somebody in my practice that loves to do it, right? And so I'm the myopia person, she's this person, we kind of bounce back and forth. But when you're looking at these kids and your practice, right? We all have a myopia practice. Like, you don't have to be the Nick Despedues of the world or the Matthew Martins of the world, or like a lot of these people where they like that's all that they do in their practice. That's great, and they're really, really good at the marketing piece. You don't even have to do that. You've got a myopia practice in your clinic right now. So when you go to your clinic tomorrow, look at your schedule. 70% of those people are myopic. 20% of them are going to be hyperopic, and 10% of them are going to be nothing, which is what we have to start making money off of, right? And you'll do that with myopia. But realizing you just saw that mom or dad, and they've got Sally and Sue that are with them, right? That's your myopia practice right there. You don't have to do anything except bring up, hey, when was their eye exam? Oh, they got checked at the pediatrician. Okay, when was their real last eye exam, right? That's how you build your practice, that you just keep planting these little seeds, and then all of a sudden they start to sprout and they start to grow. So it doesn't have to be this huge marketing thing. It doesn't have to be you lecturing. It doesn't have to be you going out into the community, right? It's just those little baby seeds that you get to plant in your practice. And yes, it like saved my life as an optometrist 100%. I mean, the doom and gloom was real. Online retailers do not want to do this, right? They want to sell glasses and they want to sell contacts and they want to do it easy. And it's not hard to learn it. Like, that's the other thing. Like, people think ORTHO-K is really scary and it's really hard to learn. It's not. We have great things now where you do a topography on a patient. You can send that topography and you've got great consultants who will hold your hand through the entire process however many times you want to, right? And if you get derailed, you get on the phone with a consultant. So we've got this back and forth now that's so easy, where an email here and there of a topography, you're done. So it's not hard.
Yeah. I've heard some say that, you know, myopia management, ORTHO-K should be the domain of the optometrist. That like, y'all are specialists. This should be your jam. This should be an optometrist jam. Do you agree with, like, you're nodding your head, so obviously you agree with that. So like, give us some background on that statement. Like, why should this be an optometrist thing? Like, why should this be the domain of the optometrist?
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't have said it any better myself. Like, we should like come up with a rap on the myopia jam. But optometrists, because we're so good with our patients, we take that time with our patients versus ophthalmologists just throwing a drop at it, right? Because none of them believe in contacts, none of them believe in ORTHO-K. It's all doom and gloom around that. But this is 100% should be ours. So this literally is the savior to optometry on charging for myopia management, managing myopes. You know, all of us are good at that. You're -5, you're -6. What do we tell them every year? Oh, you're a -6, so make sure if you got flashes and floaters, you call me, I'm on your speed dial. Why are we not managing that earlier? And so this will become and replace what we're losing to online opticals and to online retailers, right? They can't do this. This personal touch. And then that patient is a patient of yours for life, that you started with them when they were 3, 4, 5, 6. So again, getting comfortable with kids is part of it. If you don't like to do it, you can find an associate to come in 1 or 2 days a week. So there's resources out there like that. And contacts in kids is a big deal. I was 7 when I started wearing contact lenses because I was a gymnast, and it absolutely changed my life. And so you can't be scared to go. Number one, that's why you're here. And I'm excited that you're joining boot camp, or this at least gets you interested in boot camp. It's not hard to learn. So we can take some of those barriers down. But
excellent. I love it. And this is why I have you on. You know, like I wanted to do these podcasts because I wanted to share with people that this is being done, that people are successful with it, that it can like reinvigorate your passion in optometry. And this is why I have Brianna on. So okay. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you, where can they find information about you on the internet? This is always the part of the show where I'm like, hey, if there's anything you want to plug specifically, like this is your time to do it. So go ahead.
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn at Brianna Rhue. My name's right there, Rhue. My email is brhue@drcontactlens.com. that leads me into a technology piece. I'm super, super passionate, obviously, about myopia management, scleral lenses, just pediatric care, but also as a business owner, technology, which is why I invented Dr. Contact Lens. So we've got to, because we're all surrounded by technology, we've got to be the ones that are doing this in our practices and getting our staff doing more profitable things for our businesses. And so that's another one of my passions is technology. And so ORTHO-K kind of fits into that realm with myopia management and the whole gamut that just kind of comes back to it. So just look at where you want to go, write down your plan. Obviously, Vision by Design helped me launch that, which is super exciting. And anybody can do this. Not everybody should, but anybody can.
All right. Yeah, that's awesome. And if this sounds appealing to you, which I mean, I don't know how it doesn't, but if this sounds appealing to you, then you should join our organization. The American Academy of Orthokeratology and Myopia Control is made up of people just like Brianna, and they are out there. We have several forms of communication where you can come in and ask these people all sorts of questions. And they devote their actual money to support this organization because they believe in it. And they believe in the research and education of myopia control and ORTHO-K. So if you're interested in joining us, if you want to learn more, if you want to support what we're doing, get more efforts out like this to educate docs, then go to aaomc.org and click on that practitioner button. And that'll set you on your path to becoming a member. And if you have any questions about anything we talked about in this episode or any other episode for that matter, our email address for the show is thecorrectedview@gmail.com. And with that, Brianna, I love having you on. I got to have you on again for more podcasts, more content. It's always a joy to talk with you. And thank you so much for coming on to The Corrected View.
Thank you, Matt. And thank you to the AAOMC for what you guys do behind the scenes. Their board is amazing. Their education is amazing. All of their vendors are amazing. So again, this industry, the doctors are at the center of it, and we have all these people around us wanting to support us. So also look at that perspective of we're in the center of the universe, and everyone is just, yes, sometimes it looks like they want to sell to us and they want to take it, whatever. We are supporting all of that, and so they're here to support you. And so this is one organization that truly lives that and breathes that and is so exciting to be part of. So thanks for having me on.
All right. And for the audience, we'll see you at the next one.